There is a version of the divine masculine that the world applauds. He is strong. He is composed. He is logical. He is successful, capable, independent. From the outside, he looks like someone who has it together. But what most people never see is the quiet ache living beneath that strength. An ache he rarely speaks about. An ache he barely allows himself to feel. An ache that has nothing to do with weakness and everything to do with the soul. Because the divine masculine is not empty. He is full of unexpressed emotion, uncried tears, unspoken truths, and longings he was taught to bury. And before sacred union can ever arrive, this ache must be acknowledged. Not fixed. Not healed by another. But seen. So let me ask you a question that may feel uncomfortable, but deeply true. What if the divine masculine is not running away from love, but running away from the part of himself that love would expose? The mask of strength. From a very young age, the divine masculine learns a rule, often without anyone saying it out loud. Do not feel too much. He learns that emotions slow him down. That vulnerability makes him unsafe. That softness is a liability. So he builds armor. He becomes reliable. He becomes rational. He becomes productive. He becomes the strong one. And over time that armor works. It helps him survive. It helps him succeed. It helps him function in a world that rewards doing over being. But armor, no matter how well designed, always comes with a cost. Because the same walls that protect him from pain also block him from intimacy. The same discipline that helps him achieve also disconnects him from his heart. And the longer he wears the mask, the harder it becomes to remember who he was beneath it. The ache he doesn't have words for. The hidden ache of the divine masculine is not always dramatic. Sometimes it feels like restlessness. Sometimes like numbness. Sometimes like a quiet dissatisfaction he can't explain. He may have the relationship. He may have the career. He may have the lifestyle others admire. Yet something still feels off. Not wrong. Not broken. Just incomplete. He senses there is more to life than performance, success, and self-control. But he doesn't know how to access it without losing himself. So instead of turning inward, he often turns away. Away from emotions. Away from conversations that go too deep. Away from connections that ask him to be fully present. Especially connections that feel sacred. Because sacred connection does not negotiate with the ego. Sees through it. Why the divine feminine triggers this ache. When the divine masculine encounters the divine feminine, especially in a twin flame dynamic, something unexpected happens. She does not ask him to prove himself. She does not respond to his status or strength alone. She feels him. And that is terrifying. Because she mirrors what he has been avoiding. His emotional depth. His unhealed wounds. His longing to be known beyond the role he plays. In her presence, the armor feels heavy. The mask starts to crack. The ache grows louder. And so, from the outside, it may look like he is pulling away. But internally, something very different is happening. He is standing at the edge of himself. The fear beneath the distance. The divine masculine's fear is rarely, what if I lose her? It is more often, what if I lose who I think I am? Because sacred love does not allow half-presence. It does not accept emotional avoidance. It does not reward self-betrayal. Sacred union demands authenticity. And authenticity requires him to feel what he was taught to suppress. Grief he never processed. Anger he never expressed. Loneliness he learned to hide behind independence. So the ache intensifies not because love is absent but because it is near. And proximity to love reveals everything that is unresolved. He is not broken, he is becoming. This is where many misunderstand the divine masculine. They see silence and assume indifference. They see distance and assume lack of care. They see hesitation and assume emotional unavailability. But what if none of that is true? What if his silence is integration? What if his distance is self-confrontation? What if his hesitation is the soul asking for time? The ache behind his strength is not a flaw. It is an initiation. A threshold between who he has been and who he is becoming. Before sacred union, the divine masculine must face himself without distraction, without roles, without validation, without armor. And that is one of the bravest things a soul can do. The ache is a calling. Here is the truth few talk about. That ache is not meant to be numbed. It is meant to guide him. It is the soul's way of saying, there is more to you than survival, more than performance, more than control, more than strength without softness. The ache is calling him back to wholeness, back to the parts of himself he abandoned to be accepted, back to the emotional truth he buried to stay safe, back to the heart he locked away to remain functional. And until he listens, no external union will ever feel complete. Control is the divine masculine's first language. Long before he learns how to feel, long before he learns how to trust, he learns how to manage emotions, manage outcomes, manage perceptions, manage risk. Control becomes safety, because at some point in his life, often very early, he learned a quiet truth. When things fall apart, no one comes to save you. So he steps in as his own protector. He plans. He strategizes. He anticipates. He builds systems, internal and external, to make sure chaos never catches him unprepared again. And from the outside, this looks impressive. He looks grounded, capable, unshakable. But what most people don't realize is this. Control is not confidence. It is fear-wearing discipline. Why control feels like strength. The divine masculine is often praised for being steady. He doesn't panic easily. He doesn't react emotionally. He keeps going when others collapse. And the world rewards this. It rewards predictability. It rewards decisiveness. It rewards emotional containment. So the divine masculine learns to trust what he can measure, calculate, and command. Logic becomes his compass. Structure becomes his refuge. Achievement becomes proof that he is safe. But the soul does not speak the language of control. The soul speaks in sensation, in intuition, in emotion, in surrender. And that is where the conflict begins. The silent exhaustion of holding everything together. Control is heavy, not in an obvious way but in a constant background pressure that never turns off. The divine masculine is always on, always assessing, always adjusting, always making sure nothing slips. Even in love, especially in love, he may try to control how close he gets, how much he reveals, how vulnerable he allows himself to be. Not because he doesn't care, but because caring without control feels like standing unarmed in the open. And deep down he is tired. Tired of carrying responsibility alone. Tired of being the one who has to know what to do. Tired of never fully resting in another's presence. But rest requires trust. And trust requires surrender. Why sacred love threatens control? Sacred union cannot be managed. It cannot be forced. It cannot be predicted. It cannot be earned through effort alone. And that terrifies the divine masculine. Because everything that once kept him safe, discipline, logic, self-reliance, no longer works here. Sacred love asks different questions. Can you feel without needing certainty? Can you stay open without knowing the outcome? Can you remain present without trying to lead or escape? This is why sacred connection often destabilizes him. Not because it is wrong, but because it bypasses his defenses. It goes straight to the heart. And the heart does not obey commands. The illusion hidden in control. Here is the illusion the divine masculine must eventually confront. Control does not prevent pain. It only delays it. He may avoid disappointment by avoiding intimacy. He may avoid rejection by staying distant. He may avoid loss by never fully committing. But the cost is subtle and cumulative. A life that looks stable but feels empty. Relationships that function but never fully deepen. Success that satisfies the mind but not the soul. The soul grows restless when it is confined. And that restlessness shows up as anxiety, irritation, numbness, or an unshakable sense that something is missing. That something is not another achievement. It is alignment. The call of the soul is gentle but persistent. The soul does not shout. It whispers. It whispers through discomfort, through longing, through moments of stillness when distractions fade. It asks questions the divine masculine cannot logic his way out of. What if you stop trying to control love? What if safety comes from presence, not protection? What if surrender is not collapse, but liberation? First, he resists. He tells himself he just needs more clarity, more time, more stability. But the call does not go away, because the soul does not negotiate with fear. It waits. Surrender is not losing power, it is changing its source. One of the greatest misconceptions the divine masculine carries is this: if I surrender, I will lose myself. But surrender is not submission. It is not passivity. It is not weakness. It is not giving control to another person. True surrender is releasing the illusion that you must manage everything to be safe. It is the moment he realizes, I do not need to hold my breath in order to live. Surrender shifts power from the mind to the being, from effort to presence, from control to trust, from fear-based strength to grounded authenticity. And paradoxically, this makes him more solid, not less. Why the divine feminine triggers surrender? The divine feminine does not demand surrender. She invites it, through presence, through emotional truth, through the courage to feel openly. Her energy says, you do not have to hold it all together here. And that is both comforting and terrifying, because if he lets go even a little, he risks feeling everything he has kept contained. But he also tastes something new. Relief. The relief of not performing. The relief of not managing. The relief of simply being. And once he experiences that, even briefly, control no longer satisfies him the way it once did. The threshold moment. There is always a moment before sacred union where the divine masculine stands at a crossroads. On one side, familiar control, predictable patterns, emotional distance that feels safe but hollow. On the other, uncertainty, emotional exposure, a deeper intimacy that requires him to trust life itself. This is not a decision he can make with his mind. It is a decision his soul must be ready to choose. And readiness does not come from pressure. It comes from exhaustion. Exhaustion with holding everything alone. In the next part, we will explore one of the deepest longings hidden beneath control. The longing to be seen without judgment, without expectation, without needing to be strong. Because before sacred union with another can occur, the divine masculine must experience what it means to be truly seen. First by himself. Stay with this journey. It is unfolding exactly as it needs to. There is a longing the divine masculine rarely names. Not because it is small, but because it is terrifyingly big. It is the longing to be seen. Not admired. Not respected. Not validated for what he provides or achieves. But seen. Seen without judgment. Seen without expectation. Seen without being asked to prove, perform, or protect. And for the divine masculine, this longing cuts deeper than most realize. Why being seen feels unsafe. From early on, the divine masculine learns that visibility comes with conditions. He is praised when he succeeds. He is tolerated when he is useful. He is respected when he is composed. But when he falters, when he feels unsure, when he doesn't have answers, the world grows quiet. So he internalizes a dangerous belief. I am acceptable when I am strong. I am lovable when I am reliable. But if I show uncertainty, I risk rejection. Over time, he stops offering his inner world altogether. Not because it doesn't exist, but because it feels safer to keep it hidden. The difference between being known and being needed. The divine masculine is often needed. People rely on him, depend on him, expect him to lead, fix, decide. But being needed is not the same as being known. Being needed affirms his function. Being known touches his essence. And essence is vulnerable. To be known means allowing someone to see his doubts, his fears, his emotional confusion, the parts of him that don't feel heroic or impressive. That kind of exposure feels like standing without armor. So instead, he offers competence. He offers solutions. He offers stability. He offers presence, but only up to a point. The deeper layers remain untouched. The silent loneliness of emotional containment. There is a unique loneliness that comes from always being the strong one. A loneliness that doesn't disappear even when surrounded by people. Because no one is asking the real questions. No one is asking, what are you afraid of right now? What hurts that you've never said out loud? Who are you when no one needs anything from you? And the divine masculine doesn't volunteer these answers. Not because he doesn't have them, but because he's not sure they would be welcomed. So he contains. He compresses his emotional world into something manageable. And over time, that containment becomes isolation. Why judgment hurts more than rejection? The divine masculine can survive rejection. Rejection is clear. It's painful, but it's honest. Judgment is different. Judgment says, "You are wrong for feeling this. You should be better than this. This part of you is unacceptable." Judgment teaches him to edit himself, to filter what he shares, to suppress what might be misunderstood, to hide what feels too much or not enough. And the longer this goes on, the more fragmented he feels, because parts of him remain unseen, not only by others but by himself. Why the divine feminine feels so exposing? When the divine masculine encounters the divine feminine, especially in a soul-level connection, something unsettling happens. She sees through the performance. She senses what he's feeling even when he doesn't articulate it. She responds to his energy, not his words. She notices what's missing, not what's being shown. And this feels dangerous, because for the first time he realizes, I might be seen even if I don't choose to reveal myself. This triggers two opposing impulses, the desire to lean in, and the instinct to pull away. Because if she sees him fully, what if she judges him? What if she leaves? What if he disappoints her? So he hesitates, not because he lacks feeling, but because the stakes feel too high, the longing beneath the fear. Here is the truth the divine masculine rarely admits, even to himself. He longs for someone who can see him without trying to fix him. Someone who does not interpret his silence as rejection. Someone who does not take his confusion personally. Someone who can sit with his process without rushing it. He longs to be met in his humanity, not as a provider, not as a protector, not as an ideal, but as a man who is still learning how to feel safely. This longing is ancient, and it predates romance. Why he often withdraws instead of opening. When the opportunity to be seen arises, the divine masculine often does something paradoxical. He withdraws, not because the connection is wrong, but because it is right. Because being seen requires him to drop defenses that once kept him alive. It asks him to trust that he won't be judged, shamed, or abandoned for being real. And trust for him is not an idea. It is a bodily experience, one that must be built slowly. So he steps back. He creates space. He seeks solitude. He tries to understand what is happening inside him. From the outside, this can look like emotional unavailability. From the inside, it is self-preservation. Being seen begins with self-acceptance. Before the divine masculine can allow himself to be seen by another, something deeper must occur. He must see himself, without harshness, without judgment, without the pressure to immediately change. He must allow his emotions to exist without labeling them as weakness. He must recognize that uncertainty does not make him inadequate, that confusion does not make him broken, that sensitivity does not disqualify him from strength. This is where true integration begins, not through analysis, but through compassion. The moment he lets himself be seen, there is a quiet moment, often unnoticed, when the divine masculine takes a risk. He shares something real, not polished, not resolved, not impressive. And instead of rejection, he is met with presence. No fixing, no judgment, no pressure, just space. And in that moment, something profound shifts. The ache eases, the armor softens, the nervous system relaxes, because for the first time he experiences this truth. I can be seen and still be safe. This experience becomes a reference point, a memory his soul will not forget. In the next part, we will go even deeper into one of the most painful yet transformative longings of the divine masculine, the desire to feel worthy of divine love. Because until he believes he is worthy, not because of what he does but because of who he is, no union will ever feel safe enough to stay. Stay with this journey. We are only beginning to touch the heart of it. There is a belief hidden deep inside the divine masculine that shapes almost every choice he makes in love. A belief he rarely speaks aloud. A belief he may not even consciously recognize. Sounds like this: I am not ready yet. I need to fix myself first. I must become more before I can receive love. Beneath these thoughts lies a quiet ache, the desire to feel worthy of divine love. Not desired, not admired, not chosen out of chemistry or fate, but worthy, where the question of worth begins. For many divine masculines, worthiness was never unconditional. Love came with expectations. Approval came with performance. Safety came with responsibility. Whether through family dynamics, early relationships, or cultural conditioning, he learned that love had to be earned. Be strong. Be capable. Be successful. Be dependable. And if he failed, love felt uncertain. So worth became transactional. Something to prove. Something to maintain. Something that could be lost. And over time, this belief embedded itself so deeply that even divine love began to feel like a test. Why he doubts he is enough. The divine masculine often carries unspoken shame. Not loud shame, but quiet, persistent doubt. Doubt about past mistakes. Doubt about emotional limitations. Doubt about whether he can truly show up the way love requires. He remembers moments when he disappointed others. Moments when he withdrew instead of stayed. Moments when he chose safety over vulnerability. And these memories whisper, if they knew all of this, they would leave. So instead of risking exposure, he postpones love. He tells himself he will be worthy later. After healing. After success. After certainty. But later becomes a moving horizon. The paradox of divine love. Divine love does not operate on merit. It does not arrive as a reward for perfection. It does not wait until all wounds are healed. It does not demand completion. And this is precisely what makes it uncomfortable. Because if love is freely given, then the divine masculine must confront a terrifying question. What if my worth has never been the problem? What if the belief that he must earn love is the very thing keeping him from receiving it? Why he pushes love away when it comes close? When divine love approaches, especially through the divine feminine, it often triggers an internal conflict. On one side, a longing to be held, accepted, and chosen fully. On the other, a fear of being seen as insufficient. So he hesitates. He questions the connection. He doubts the timing. He looks for reasons to delay. Not because love is unwanted, but because it feels undeserved. This creates a painful pattern. The closer love gets, the more he retreats. Because receiving love without conditions would require him to release the belief that he is fundamentally flawed. And that belief, however painful, has become familiar. The inner judge that never rests. Inside the divine masculine lives an inner voice that constantly evaluates him. Did I do enough? Am I strong enough? Did I handle that correctly? Should I be better by now? This inner judge is relentless. It does not celebrate progress. It does not recognize effort. It only points to what is missing. And under its gaze, worth feels fragile, conditional. So even when love is offered sincerely, the divine masculine struggles to trust it. Because how can love be real if he still sees so many reasons he should not deserve it? Why worthiness is tied to identity. For the divine masculine, worth is often fused with identity. Who he is equals what he can provide. When this identity is threatened, through failure, uncertainty, or emotional vulnerability, his sense of worth collapses. And love becomes dangerous. Because love would see him in moments when he is unsure, ungrounded, incomplete. Moments he was taught to hide. So he keeps love at a distance, not out of indifference but out of self-protection. The turning point. When effort no longer works. There comes a moment when striving exhausts him. When self-improvement becomes self-punishment. When discipline turns into self-rejection. When working on himself feels like running from himself. And in that exhaustion, a deeper realization begins to surface. No amount of becoming will make me feel worthy if I don't already believe I am. This realization is destabilizing, because it means he cannot earn his way into worth. He must accept it. And acceptance feels far more vulnerable than effort. learning to receive without proof. Feeling worthy of divine love does not happen all at once. It happens in moments. Moments when he allows himself to receive kindness without suspicion. Moments when he lets someone care without questioning their motives. Moments when he does not immediately compensate, fix, or withdraw. Each moment challenges the old belief, I must prove my value. And slowly a new truth takes shape. I am allowed to be loved, even while I am still becoming. This truth is not loud, but it is liberating. The role of the divine feminine. The divine feminine does not convince him of his worth. She reflects it, through presence, through patience, through love that does not demand performance. Her energy communicates, you do not need to earn your place here, but he must choose to believe it. No one can force worthiness into him. It must be claimed from within. In the next part, we will explore one of the deepest layers beneath worthiness, the need to heal the inner child. Because before the divine masculine can fully receive divine love, he must meet the part of himself that first learned he was not enough. Stay with this journey. What is unfolding now is not separation, it is preparation. Before the divine masculine ever learns how to love as a man, he learns how to survive as a child. And long before words like sacred union, divine love, or spiritual awakening enter his life, his nervous system has already formed a map of what connection feels like. This is where the story truly begins. Not in adulthood, not in romance, but in childhood. The child who learned to be quiet. Many divine masculines grew up in environments where emotions were misunderstood, minimized, or discouraged. Crying was seen as weakness. Sensitivity was seen as inconvenience. Needs were seen as burdens. So the child adapted. He became quiet. He became observant. He learned to read the room before speaking. He learned to regulate others by regulating himself. This adaptation was intelligent. It helped him stay safe. It helped him stay connected in the only way available. But the cost was internal. His emotions did not disappear. They went underground. Why the inner child still lives inside him? The inner child does not vanish when we grow up. He waits. He waits in the body, in the nervous system, in emotional reactions that seem disproportionate or confusing. This is why the divine masculine may feel overwhelmed by intimacy. Why silence can feel safer than conversation. Why closeness can trigger anxiety. Why he withdraws not because he doesn't care, but because something inside him is afraid. That something is not weakness. It is memory. The wounds he rarely names. The inner child of the divine masculine often carries wounds such as emotional neglect, feeling unseen or unheard, having to grow up too fast, being praised for performance not presence, being punished or shamed for emotional expression. These wounds do not always come from obvious trauma. Sometimes they come from absence. The absence of attunement. The absence of reassurance. The absence of safety and vulnerability. An absence leaves marks just as deep as harm. Why adult love triggers childhood pain. When the divine masculine enters an intimate connection, his inner child comes with him. Love activates memory. Not consciously but somatically. A partner's disappointment may echo parental disapproval. A request for emotional availability may feel like pressure he cannot meet. A conflict may feel like a threat to attachment. So instead of responding as an adult, his nervous system reacts as the child who once learned. It's safer to pull away. It's safer to stay quiet. It's safer to handle this alone. This is why logic alone cannot resolve relational patterns. Because the wound lives deeper than thought. Why he becomes the protector. Many divine masculines develop a protector identity. He becomes strong so no one can hurt him again. He becomes capable so he doesn't need to depend. He becomes emotionally contained so he never feels exposed. This protector served a purpose. But over time it begins to suffocate the child it was meant to defend. Because protection without tenderness becomes isolation. And the inner child longs not for more defense, but for safety through connection. Healing does not mean blaming the past. Healing the inner child is not about assigning fault. It is about recognizing impact. Understanding that what he learned made sense at the time. and that those strategies no longer serve him now. This recognition requires compassion, not judgment, because the child did not choose his environment. He chose survival. The moment the divine masculine turns inward, there comes a moment, often during separation, loss, or spiritual awakening, when the divine masculine can no longer outrun his inner world. Distractions stop working, achievements feel hollow, external validation fades, and he is left with himself. This is the moment the inner child steps forward, not with words, but with feelings, loneliness, grief, fear, longing. And if he listens, really listens, something profound happens. Reparenting the self. Healing the inner child does not require returning to the past. It requires becoming the presence he once needed. This means allowing emotions without dismissal, offering reassurance instead of criticism, creating safety through consistency, listening without rushing to fix. The divine masculine learns to say internally, "I am here now. You are not alone anymore. You do not have to earn love." These words slowly rewire the nervous system, not through force but through repetition and trust. Why this healing changes everything. When the inner child begins to feel safe, the divine masculine no longer needs to avoid intimacy, because intimacy no longer feels like danger. He can stay present in discomfort. He can express uncertainty without shame. He can remain open even when emotions arise. This does not make him fragile. It makes him grounded. The divine feminine as mirror, not healer. The divine feminine does not heal the inner child for him. She reflects what is possible. Her openness invites his. Her emotional fluency mirrors his capacity. Her presence shows him that softness does not equal loss. But the healing is his responsibility and his initiation. In the next part, we will explore a realization that often follows inner child healing. The craving for inner peace, not just union. Because once the divine masculine begins to heal within, he no longer seeks love to escape pain. He seeks love as an expression of wholeness. Stay with this journey. The deepest shifts are happening now. There comes a moment in the divine masculine's journey when something quietly but irrevocably changes. He realizes that what he has been searching for is not only a person, it is peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from avoidance. Not the temporary relief of distraction, success, or validation, but inner peace. The kind that remains even when no one is there to hold him. The kind that does not depend on circumstances aligning perfectly. This realization marks a turning point. Because until now, love has often felt like the answer to his pain. And now, he begins to see that pain itself is asking for something deeper. Why he mistook union for peace. For a long time, the divine masculine believed that reunion would calm him. That once the connection stabilized, once the relationship was secure, once the questions were answered, he would finally be able to rest. This belief is understandable. Connection does soothe the nervous system. Love does offer moments of relief. Being seen does soften old wounds. But when peace is outsourced, it becomes fragile. Because no other soul can regulate what lives unresolved inside him. So even in connection, something restless remained. A background tension. An unease he could not name. A sense that something was still unfinished. The exhaustion of emotional turbulence. The divine masculine grows tired. Not just physically but existentially. Tired of inner conflict. Tired of oscillating between longing and withdrawal. Tired of carrying unresolved emotion beneath controlled behavior. He notices patterns. When things get intense, he disconnects. When closeness deepens, anxiety rises. When silence appears, fear follows. And slowly a realization dawns. I don't want intensity anymore. I want peace. This is not resignation. It is maturity. Peace is not the absence of feeling. Here is an important truth the divine masculine must learn. Inner peace does not mean emotional numbness. It does not mean detachment from life. It does not mean suppressing desire or love. True peace is the ability to feel without being consumed, to experience longing without panic, to experience conflict without collapse, to experience love without losing oneself. This kind of peace comes from regulation, not control, from presence, not avoidance. Why chaos felt familiar? For many divine masculines, chaos has been normalized. Emotional unpredictability, high highs and low lows, cycles of closeness and distance. This emotional turbulence often mirrors early relational environments. And what is familiar can feel safer than what is calm, because calm requires presence, and presence requires being with oneself. So the craving for peace often arrives after exhaustion, when chaos no longer feels exciting, meaningful, or survivable. The shift from chasing to grounding. At this stage, the divine masculine stops chasing union as an escape. He stops romanticizing intensity as depth. He stops confusing longing with love. Instead, he turns inward. He asks quieter questions. What brings my nervous system into balance? What allows me to breathe more deeply? What helps me feel settled inside my own body? These questions change everything. Because love is no longer about relief from pain. It becomes an extension of inner stability, learning to sit with himself. Inner peace requires the ability to sit with oneself without distraction, without needing to fix, analyze, or escape. This is difficult, because stillness reveals what movement hides. Unprocessed grief, unspoken emotions, old fears that surface when there is no noise. But stillness also offers something rare. Integration. The divine masculine begins to experience moments where nothing is required of him. No performance, no decision, no strength, just being. And in these moments the body begins to soften. Why union without peace cannot last. This is a hard truth, but a necessary one. Union without inner peace will always recreate separation, because unresolved inner tension projects outward. It creates misunderstandings, emotional reactivity, cycles of push and pull. The divine masculine begins to understand. If I bring chaos into union, union will reflect it back to me. So peace becomes preparation. Not an obstacle to love, but its foundation. Peace as a masculine strength. The world often defines masculine strength as action, but spiritual maturity reframes strength as presence. The ability to remain grounded during emotional intensity. The ability to listen without defensiveness. The ability to stay open without losing boundaries. This is not passive. It is embodied leadership. And it can only come from inner peace. The divine feminine and the frequency of calm. The divine feminine often embodies emotional flow, but her highest expression is not chaos. It is coherence. She feels deeply, yes, but she also rests in trust. This frequency invites the divine masculine into peace, not through pressure but resonance. And when he begins to meet her from a place of inner calm, something shifts. The dynamic stabilizes. Communication deepens. Presence replaces projection. Peace is the gateway, not the destination. Inner peace is not the end of the journey. It is the ground from which courage emerges. Because once the divine masculine is no longer overwhelmed by his inner world, he can finally turn toward what he has avoided most. His shadow. In the next part, we will explore one of the most confronting yet liberating stages of the journey. The courage to face the shadow. Because peace does not come from bypassing darkness. It comes from walking through it with awareness. Stay with this journey. The deeper truth is about to be revealed. There is a moment in the divine masculine's journey when inner peace is no longer enough. Not because peace is false, but because peace, once established, reveals what has been avoided. Stillness does not erase the shadow. It illuminates it. And for the divine masculine, this is where the real initiation begins. What the shadow really is. The shadow is not evil. It is not darkness for the sake of darkness. It is not something to destroy. The shadow is everything the divine masculine learned to hide in order to survive. The anger he was told was unacceptable. The grief he never had space to feel. The jealousy he judged himself for. The desire he labeled as selfish. The fear he pretended not to have. These parts did not disappear. They went underground. And anything buried alive eventually demands to be seen. Why the shadow feels dangerous. For most of his life, the divine masculine has equated control with safety. The shadow represents loss of control. Because shadow emotions are messy, they don't follow logic. They don't ask permission. Anger rises without warning. Grief crashes unexpectedly. Desire conflicts with identity. So he learned to suppress. And suppression worked until it didn't. Because the shadow does not vanish when ignored. It leaks. Through passive aggression. Through emotional withdrawal. Through addictions, compulsions, or numbing behaviors. Through sudden distance in relationships that feel too real. Why sacred union triggers the shadow? Sacred union does not create the shadow. It reveals it. When the divine masculine approaches true intimacy, every unintegrated part surfaces. Not to sabotage, but to be healed. This is why union often feels chaotic before it feels safe. Because love lowers defenses. And when defenses drop, the shadow steps forward. Not as an enemy, but as a messenger. The masculine fear of his own darkness. The divine masculine often fears his shadow not because it is destructive, but because he does not trust himself with it. He fears his anger will overwhelm him. He fears his desire will make him selfish. He fears his grief will make him weak. So he keeps these energies locked away. But locked energy turns toxic. Unexpressed anger becomes resentment. Unfelt grief becomes numbness. Unowned desire becomes disconnection. The shadow demands acknowledgement, not expression without awareness. Facing the shadow is an act of responsibility. Shadow work is not indulgence. It is accountability. It is the divine masculine saying, I will not project my unresolved pain onto others. I will not abandon myself to maintain an image. I will take responsibility for what lives inside me. This requires courage, because it means seeing oneself clearly, without excuses and without self-hatred. The death of the false self. To face the shadow, something must die. Not the soul, not the heart, but the false self. The identity built on suppression. The persona built on being fine. The image built on control. This death feels like loss, because the false self has kept him functional. But functionality is not wholeness. And the soul is asking for more. The alchemy of integration. Shadow integration is not about acting out. It is about awareness. Sitting with anger without becoming violent. Feeling grief without collapsing. Acknowledging desire without shame. This is alchemy. Turning raw emotion into conscious power. When the divine masculine integrates his shadow, something extraordinary happens. His energy stabilizes. His presence deepens. His boundaries strengthen. Because what he owns can no longer control him. Why this is a masculine rite of passage. Historically, masculinity was forged through initiation. Trials that force confrontation with fear, limitation, and inner darkness. Modern masculinity often lacks this structure. So the soul creates its own initiation. Through relationships. Through loss. Through awakening. Facing the shadow is not a detour from the path. It is the path. The shadow as a source of power. Here is the truth few are taught. The shadow holds immense power. Anger holds clarity and boundaries. Grief holds depth and compassion. Desire holds creativity and life force. Fear holds wisdom and humility. When these energies are integrated, the divine masculine becomes whole. Not perfect. Whole. How the divine feminine reflects the shadow. The divine feminine does not carry the divine masculine's shadow. She reflects it. Her emotional honesty mirrors his repression. Her openness mirrors his guardedness. Her sensitivity mirrors his avoidance. This mirroring can feel confrontational, but it is sacred, because it offers him the chance to see what he has disowned, the moment he chooses to stay. There is a defining moment when the divine masculine feels the urge to run, to disconnect, to numb, to return to familiar patterns, and instead, he stays, with the discomfort, with the emotion, with himself. This moment is quiet, but it changes everything, because courage is not the absence of fear. It is presence with it. In the next part, we will explore what emerges after shadow integration, the call to step into his soul mission. Because once the divine masculine becomes whole within himself, his energy no longer seeks validation, seeks purpose. Stay with this journey. What is coming next is not just about love. After the shadow is faced, something quiet but undeniable begins to emerge. It is not urgency. It is not ambition. It is not the restless drive to prove anything. It is a call that does not come from the mind, but from the deepest layer of the soul. The divine masculine begins to feel it not as pressure, but as direction. And this is where the journey shifts from healing to embodiment. Why healing is not the final destination. For a long time, the divine masculine believed that healing was the goal. Heal the wounds, integrate the shadow, find inner peace. And yes, these steps are essential. But healing alone is not fulfillment, because the soul is not meant only to recover. It is meant to express. It is meant to create, build, protect, and serve. From a place of wholeness. When healing is complete enough, the divine masculine begins to feel restless again. But this restlessness feels different. It is not anxiety. It is readiness. The difference between ambition and mission. Before awakening, the divine masculine often pursued ambition, achievement for validation, success for security, status for identity. After awakening, ambition loses its grip, because something deeper has taken its place. Mission is not about recognition. It is not about dominance. It is not about proving worth. Mission is alignment. Feels like remembering rather than striving. The soul mission was always there. The soul mission does not appear suddenly. It has always been present, beneath layers of conditioning, fear, and survival strategies. It shows up early in life as curiosity, as natural talent, as a pull towards certain roles or expressions. But when survival is the priority, mission is postponed. Now, with inner stability restored, the divine masculine can finally hear it. Why purpose stabilizes masculine energy? Masculine energy seeks direction. Without purpose, it becomes restless or destructive. Without meaning, it turns inward as self-doubt or outward as aggression. A soul-aligned mission grounds masculine energy. It gives him a reason to wake up, a reason to focus, a reason to commit. And this commitment is no longer fueled by fear, but by devotion. Mission is not always loud or grand. A common misconception is that a soul mission must be extraordinary, that it must change the world visibly, that it must be spiritual in form, that it must look impressive. But soul mission is not defined by scale. It is defined by sincerity. It can express through leadership, teaching, creating, protecting, building systems that serve others, holding space, bringing order where there was chaos. What matters is alignment, not appearance. Why union waits for mission? Sacred union does not compete with mission, supports it. But union cannot become the mission. Because when the divine masculine centers his entire identity around a relationship, imbalance occurs. The soul knows this. That is why union often delays itself until the divine masculine anchors into purpose. Because love flourishes best when both energies are moving toward their own callings. The shift from needing to choosing. When the divine masculine aligns with his soul mission, his relationship to love changes. He no longer needs love to feel whole. He chooses love to share wholeness. This shift transforms the dynamic. There is less fear of loss, less clinging, less hesitation, because his life is no longer empty without union. It is full. The divine feminine as witness, not direction. The divine feminine does not define his mission. She witnesses it. She feels his alignment. She responds to his grounded presence. She relaxes into his leadership, not control but clarity. This polarity feels natural, because both energies are in integrity. Mission requires discipline, not perfection. Stepping into soul mission does not mean certainty. It means commitment. There will be doubt. There will be resistance. There will be moments of discomfort. But now, the divine masculine has something he didn't have before. Inner authority. He trusts his direction even when the path is unclear. The fear that still lingers. Even at this stage, fear has not disappeared. But it no longer leads. Fear whispers, "What if I fail?" The soul responds, "Move anyway." This is courage. Not bravado. Not recklessness. Presence in motion. Mission as sacred responsibility. The divine masculine begins to understand that his gifts are not random. They are entrusted, to be cultivated, to be refined, to be offered. This sense of responsibility is not heavy. It is grounding, because he is no longer drifting. He is contributing. In the next part, we will explore the moment everything softens again. The surrender, letting love find him. Because once the divine masculine stands firmly in his purpose, he no longer chases union. He becomes available for it. Stay with this journey. The final unfolding is near. There comes a moment in the divine masculine's journey that does not arrive through effort. It cannot be planned. It cannot be forced. It cannot be earned. It arrives quietly, often after everything else has been tried. This moment is surrender. Not surrender as defeat. Not surrender as giving up. But surrender as release. Why surrender is so difficult for the divine masculine? For most of his life, the divine masculine has survived by doing, by fixing, by deciding, by holding, by pushing forward when things felt uncertain. Action was safety. Movement was control. Effort was identity. So surrender feels unnatural, because surrender asks him to stop managing the outcome. And for someone whose nervous system equates control with survival, this feels like standing at the edge of a cliff without knowing what comes next. The illusion that surrender means passivity. One of the deepest misunderstandings about surrender is this, that it means becoming passive. But surrender is not inactivity. It is alignment. It is the choice to stop resisting what the soul already knows. The divine masculine does not surrender because he is weak. He surrenders because effort no longer produces truth, what he finally releases. In this moment, the divine masculine releases many things, often without consciously naming them. He releases the need to be ready before receiving love. He releases the need to control timing. He releases the fantasy that union must look a certain way to be real. He releases the belief that love will abandon him if he relaxes. Most importantly, he releases the inner tension that has said, "I must hold everything together or it will fall apart." And in releasing this belief, something extraordinary happens. Nothing falls apart. The softening of the nervous system. Surrender is not a thought. It is a physiological shift. The body exhales. The jaw unclenches. The chest softens. For the first time, the divine masculine feels what it is like to rest inside himself. Not distracted. Not defended. Not braced. Just present. And presence changes everything. Why love can finally reach him. Love has always been near. But love cannot enter a system that is closed. It cannot land where there is constant vigilance. It cannot settle where there is fear of collapse. Surrender opens the door. Not dramatically, but gently. And suddenly, love no longer feels like something he must chase or analyze. It feels like something that recognizes him. The shift from pursuit to allowance. Before surrender, the divine masculine may have pursued love consciously or unconsciously, seeking confirmation, seeking reassurance, seeking certainty. After surrender, pursuit dissolves. He no longer asks, "How do I make this happen?" He begins to ask, "How do I stay present with what is?" This subtle shift transforms the entire dynamic, because love responds to availability, not effort. Why timing stops being a question. One of the great sources of pain on the journey has been timing. Is it too soon? Too late? Am I behind? Did I miss my chance? In surrender, these questions lose their grip. Because the divine masculine realizes, what is meant for alignment does not require urgency. It arrives when resistance ends. Surrender is not giving up discernment. Surrender does not mean abandoning boundaries. It does not mean accepting anything that appears. The divine masculine does not lower his standards. He raises his presence. He no longer reacts from fear or longing. He responds from grounded clarity. And this makes him deeply discerning, without being defensive. The divine feminine feels the shift immediately. When the divine masculine surrenders, the divine feminine feels it energetically. There is less tension, less push-pull, less unspoken resistance. His presence becomes steady, not distant, not grasping, just here. And this steadiness creates safety. Not through control but through openness. Love without negotiation. One of the most profound outcomes of surrender is this. Love no longer needs negotiation. He does not bargain with fate. He does not demand guarantees. He does not set conditions on vulnerability. He offers presence and lets life respond. This is where sacred love begins to flow naturally. The paradox of power. Here is the paradox the divine masculine discovers. When he stops trying to control love, he becomes more powerful within it. Because power rooted in presence is unshakable. It does not depend on outcome. It does not collapse under uncertainty. It remains. A quiet recognition. Often, surrender does not come with fireworks. It comes with a simple recognition. I don't need to do anything right now. And in that stillness, the heart opens without effort. Love is no longer something to figure out. It is something to experience. In the final part, we will explore what happens next. Sacred union begins within. Because when the divine masculine stops chasing love and starts embodying presence, union no longer feels like a destination, feels like recognition. Stay with this final unfolding. What completes the journey has been inside you all along. There is a moment, quiet, almost unremarkable, when the divine masculine realizes something that changes everything. Nothing is missing. Not because life is perfect. Not because all wounds are healed. Not because love has finally arrived in the form he imagined. But because he is no longer divided within himself. This is where sacred union truly begins. Not with another soul. Not with a reunion. Not with a promise of forever. But within. The end of seeking. For most of his life, the divine masculine has been seeking. Seeking safety. Seeking certainty. Seeking approval. Seeking love. Even the spiritual journey at times became another form of seeking. Another way to arrive somewhere better. Another version of becoming enough. But at the end of the path, something unexpected happens. The seeking stops. Not because he has obtained everything, but because he has stopped abandoning himself. Union is not an event, it is a state. Sacred union is often imagined as a moment in time. A reunion. Confession. A commitment. A happily ever after. But sacred union is not an event. It is a state of being. It is what happens when the inner masculine and inner feminine are no longer at war. When logic no longer suppresses emotion. When strength no longer denies softness. When action flows from presence, not fear. This is union. And from this state, outer union becomes possible, but no longer necessary for wholeness. The masculine finally comes home to himself. The divine masculine no longer needs to prove. He no longer needs to chase. He no longer needs to withhold. He knows who he is, even when uncertainty arises. He can feel deeply without collapsing. He can stand firmly without closing his heart. He can love without losing himself. This is not perfection. This is integration. Why love feels different now. When love arrives now, it lands differently. It does not destabilize him. It does not threaten his identity. It does not awaken panic or urgency. Feels familiar. Because the love he once sought outside now lives inside his nervous system. He is no longer asking love to save him. He is inviting love to walk beside him. The divine feminine meets him here. At this stage, the divine feminine does not need to chase, wait, or hold space endlessly. She meets him in presence. She feels his groundedness. She trusts his steadiness. She relaxes into polarity that no longer feels forced or fragile. There is no longer a power struggle. There is resonance. And resonance does not need explanation. Union without attachment. One of the most beautiful paradoxes of sacred union is this. It deepens when attachment dissolves. The divine masculine can now say, I choose you, not because I need you, but because I see you. This choice is powerful, because it is free. What changes in the world around him? When the divine masculine becomes internally unified, the world responds differently. Relationships soften. Communication clarifies. Conflict becomes navigable instead of threatening. Even when union has not yet manifested physically, something profound has already occurred. The cycle has ended. No more running. No more chasing. No more waiting for permission to live fully. Sacred union is a frequency. Sacred union is not something you attract by effort. It is something you embody. And when you embody it, everything that resonates with it finds you naturally. Not through force. Not through timing anxiety. But through alignment. If you are still in separation, if you are listening to this and thinking, but I am still alone, but the union has not happened yet, but the story feels unfinished, hear this gently. Separation is not punishment. It is preparation. If you are walking this path, it is because your soul is maturing beyond dependency. You are learning to love without losing yourself. And that is sacred. A final question for the soul. Before we close, sit with this question, not to answer it quickly but to feel it. Who am I when I stop waiting for love to arrive? And start living as if love already lives within me? Because that version of you is the one sacred union recognizes. The divine masculine does not arrive at sacred union by becoming someone else. He arrives by remembering who he has always been. Beneath the armor, beneath the fear, beneath the seeking. Whole. Present. Alive. And from this place, love no longer feels like destiny or struggle. Feels like home. If this journey resonated with you, take a moment to reflect. Which part of this series spoke to you most deeply? Comment below and share where you are on your journey. Your words may guide someone else. Subscribe to this channel if you feel called to explore deeper soul-level truths, healing, and sacred connection. And if you know someone walking this path, share this video with them. You are not late. You are not broken. You are becoming. And sacred union has already begun.